Rain slammed against the diner windows like the sky was angry. A soaked, elderly white woman struggled across the parking lot, clutching her cane. Inside, the manager pointed at the door and barked, "Don't you dare help her. Customers like that bring trouble." But Jamal didn't listen. He grabbed his jacket, ran into the storm, and shielded her with it. He walked her all the way to the door, and the manager locked eyes with him, face red with rage. The old woman smiled at Jamal. The manager snapped, "You're done after your shift." Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. The day started like it always did for Marcus Brooks. Quiet, tired, and way too early for anybody with a normal heartbeat. The sky outside the diner windows was still a sleepy gray, the kind that made even the street lamps look like they were yawning. Inside the place, though, the world was already awake. The clatter of forks on cheap ceramic plates, the shuffle of regulars sliding into their usual vinyl booths, the hiss of the old coffee machine coughing out another batch of burnt liquid caffeine. It all blended into that familiar messy music Marcus knew by heart. He stood behind the counter, tying the faded red apron he wore so many times, it felt like part of his skin now. 29 years of life had already left tired fingerprints on his face, mostly around his eyes, but his smile stayed soft. Kind. Too kind, people said. The kind of smile that made strangers trust him a little too easily and coworkers rely on him a little too much. "Morning, Marcus," called old Mr. Tanner from booth 3, lifting his mug like a slow salute. "Morning, sir," Marcus said, warmth rolling right out of him like it was the easiest thing in the world. He grabbed the coffee pot and moved through the maze of tables with a casual rhythm, humming something under his breath that didn't match any song playing overhead. The diner, Whitby's Corner, looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 80s. The teal vinyl booths were cracked along the seams, patched with clear tape the manager insisted gave it character. Ceiling fans spun like they were exhausted. The air smelled like bacon grease, fried hash browns, and coffee that somebody clearly forgot to toss yesterday. But the regulars loved it. They said it felt like home. They said it felt like familiarity. Marcus said it felt like bills that needed paying. 2 jobs, sometimes 3 when the money ran thin. And it always ran thin. His little brother Isaiah was in college, first one in their family to even touch a dorm room. And Marcus was determined not to let loans swallow him whole. So he worked, always worked, and somehow, even on no sleep, he managed to greet everybody the same way. Gentle voice, patient tone, hope he never quite lost. The morning rush hit fast. A wave of chatter rolled through the diner, orders tossed around, plates sizzling, chairs scraping. Marcus moved between tables like he floated instead of walked. He refilled mugs before customers even asked. He slid plates onto tables with quiet precision. He apologized for things he didn't need to apologize for, because the manager, Robbins, was watching him like he always did. "Marcus," Robbins said sharply across the counter, snapping his fingers like Marcus was a dog he was calling home. "Wipe the syrup off table 8. You missed a spot." "I wiped it twice," Marcus murmured under his breath, but he just nodded instead, grabbing a cloth. He cleaned it again, and again. Robbins stood there, leaning on the counter like a king surveying his kingdom, while Marcus scrubbed the tiniest imaginable than anybody else on the schedule. Everybody knew it, but nobody said anything. Not because they didn't notice, but because they were used to it. Used to watching Marcus Carnery stain. It was always like that. Nitpicking, watching, judging him hairy more than anybody should ever have to. At the next table, two middle-aged customers talked about him like he wasn't standing right there beside them. "He's good help," one muttered, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Quiet. You don't gotta talk to him much." "I just don't want him mixing up my order again," the other replied, even though Marcus hadn't messed up a single order all week. He heard it. Of course he did, but he only smiled and asked, "Y'all need any jam or butter with that?" They didn't even look at him. Tips were worse on days like this. When he was the one serving, some folks acted like the tip jar was invisible, like his kindness was part of the menu price, like respect didn't cost anything, so they didn't bother paying it. He kept moving anyway. The bell above the diner door jingled. A gust of cool air rolled in, carrying the smell of rain waiting its turn. Clouds were already gathering, thick and heavy, crowding the sky like they had opinions. The storm wasn't here yet, but it was close enough to hum. Marcus sighed, leaning against the counter for a second as he watched the first speckle of drizzle blur the window. His shirt collar was damp from sweat. His hands were tired. His feet had checked out emotionally around 6:30 a.m. His coworker, Maddie, slid beside him, blowing a strand of hair off her forehead. "You holding up, hero?" she joked lightly. Marcus exhaled a slow laugh. "Trying my best." "Robbins is on one today," she muttered. "Be careful. He already yelled at Jenna for breathing too hard." "Story of my life," Marcus said with a shrug. Maddie gave him that look people always gave him, half sympathy, half admiration. The kind people give when they know somebody deserves better, but can't give it to them. Marcus rolled his neck, shook the tension from his shoulders, grabbed another pot of coffee, and brushed past her. "One good day," he said quietly, almost to himself. "That's all I'm asking for. Just one." Maddie heard it. The cook heard it. Even Robbins, glaring from afar, seemed to hear it. And in less than an hour, everything he thought he knew about this small-town rhythm, this job, this place that barely appreciated him, was gonna change. One heartbeat, one choice, one step in the rain, and the whole world would tilt beneath his feet. For now, though, he just refilled another cup, smiled another tired smile, and kept hoping the universe would give him a break. The rain didn't ease into the day. Nah, it barged in like it owned the place. 1 minute, the diner windows were just fogged up from steam and breath, and the next, water came down in sheets so thick the parking lot blurred into a shiny gray puddle. Every drop hit the roof like impatient fingers tapping. Inside, Whitby's corner got quiet in that uneasy way small diners do when the weather decides to put on a show. Conversations softened, plates clinked gentler. The whole place seemed to lean toward the windows like it was waiting for something. Marcus kept moving, but even he felt the shift. The air got heavier, like the storm wasn't just outside. He stepped up to a foretop near the window, where a trio of customers sat scrolling on their phones, dripping attitude more than rainwater. He put on the same warm smile he'd used all morning. "Hey y'all, what can I?" They ignored him, flat out, eyes glued to their screens, fingers swiping. He cleared his throat softly, tried again, a little louder. "Mornin'. Can I start y'all with, 'We already been waitin','" the woman snapped without looking up. Her tone was sharp enough to slice bread. "Where's our coffee? We asked someone else earlier." Marcus blinked. No one had told him. "I can grab that right now for y'all." "You think?" the man muttered. "Service here's always slow." He didn't respond to that. He didn't have the room in his chest for anger today, or any day really. He just nodded and slid away. As he poured their coffees, he felt the eyes. The ones from the manager's station. Robbins stood there, arms folded, chewing on a toothpick like he was debating whether to spit it at someone. His gaze tracked Marcus's every move like he was waiting, hoping, even, for something to go wrong. Marcus brought the coffees back to the table carefully, set them down one by one. "That took long enough," the woman muttered. "Sorry about that," Marcus said softly. "It's busy today." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever." He walked off before his jaw clenched too tight. But the universe wasn't done poking at him. Barely 2 minutes later, Robbins barked from the counter. "Marcus, come here." Marcus approached, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yes, sir?" "You've got table 11 complaining." "Already," Robbins said, holding a ticket like it was evidence in a trial. "They said you're too slow." Marcus blinked in disbelief. "Sir, I took their order less than 5 minutes ago." "I don't need excuses. I need you to move faster." "I'm already handling 6 tables by myself," Marcus said, still polite but a tiny bit tired. "Jenna and Maddie split 4 between them." Robbins leaned in, lowering his voice but sharpening his tone. "Watch yourself, boy. I'm not in the mood." Something in Marcus's chest tightened. It wasn't a new feeling, but he swallowed it down, the way he'd done 1,000 times. "Yes, sir," he said. He backed away, turning toward the kitchen as the subtle cuts started stacking like bricks inside him. At booth 6, a couple exchanged looks when he approached, as if he was trouble, as if he was too much, too close, too something. "We'll wait for the other girl," the woman said, waving him off. "I can take your order just fine," Marcus offered gently. "No offense," the man said, which always meant full offense. "But we want someone a little friendlier." Marcus felt the slap of the implication but didn't let it show. He nodded once. "I'll grab Maddie for y'all." As he walked away, he heard the woman whisper, "He looks annoyed already. Bad attitude." He wasn't annoyed. He was tired, and the world had a talent for confusing the two when it came to men like him. He kept going. Plate after plate, order after order, smile after forced smile. The diner buzzed around him, but every little thing seemed designed to grind him down. A man at the counter flagged him. "Hey, where's the ketchup? I asked someone 10 minutes ago." Marcus handed him a bottle from the shelf. "Here you go." "Finally," the man muttered. A group near the door stopped talking the moment Marcus stepped near. Their conversation shifted into hushes, glances, and little smirks. The kind people think you don't notice, but you always do. A lady near the back asked, "Do you know if someone else can take care of us instead? You seem busy." Busy meaning black, overworked, easy to blame. And all the while, Robbins watched him. Every step, every turn, every breath. "Marcus," he snapped again, passing by. "Table 14 says you were rude." "I haven't even spoken to table 14 yet," Marcus said softly. Robbins scoffed. "Don't argue with me. Just fix it." "I'm not arguing." "You're doing it again." What? That tone. He didn't have one. But Robbins needed an excuse, so he built one. Marcus turned away before the heat in his eyes leaked into his voice. Rain smashed harder against the windows, a storm playing percussion while the diner played cruelty. He felt himself shrinking, not physically, but in that way people shrink when the world keeps telling them they're less. Still, he kept moving. He had Isaiah's tuition in the front pocket of his mind, rent in the back pocket, groceries tucked under his ribs, pride stuffed somewhere under it all. He couldn't risk his job. Not today, not ever. And then, mid-shift, mid-rush, mid-storm, someone outside caught his eye. An old woman stood on the sidewalk just beyond the awning, frail, shaking, supporting herself with a flimsy cane that looked one strong breeze away from snapping. Her coat was soaked through, her hair plastered to her forehead. She squinted through the rain like she was trying to read the world, but the letters were running. Marcus froze. No umbrella, no car, no help, just her, alone in the downpour. Damn, he whispered under his breath. Maddie glanced over. Who's that? Dunno, Marcus murmured, already stepping toward the door. But she ain't okay. Marcus, Maddie warned gently, glancing toward the manager's perch. He knew what she meant. He also knew he didn't care. Be right back, he said. Because no matter how tired he was, no matter how many hits he took today, kindness wasn't something he turned off. Even when the world acted like it didn't matter, even when it cost him. He reached for the door, and that was the exact moment everything shifted. The rain, the diner, his life, everything. The diner door creaked as Marcus pulled it open. A blast of cold rain cutting straight across his face like the sky was mad at him personally. He squinted out toward the sidewalk, where the old woman clung to her cane like she was holding on to the last piece of the world. Water poured off the brim of her shabby hat, running down her cheeks like rivers she didn't ask for. She wasn't just wet, she was drowning in the storm. Marcus didn't hesitate, didn't think twice. Compassion was muscle memory for him. But as he stepped out, a voice sliced through the air behind him. Marcus, get back inside! He turned his head. Robin stood at the door like a blockade, one hand gripping the metal frame, the other pointing sharply at Marcus like he was issuing a court order. Sir, she needs help, Marcus said, rain already soaking through his sleeves. Robbins scoffed, glancing sharply at the soaked woman like she was an inconvenience. She ain't spending money here, he snapped. You're on the clock. Leave her. The words hit Marcus so hard he almost slipped himself. For a second, he genuinely didn't understand what he heard. She's a person, he said quietly, voice fighting through the rain. She's barely standing. You heard me, Robbins barked, stepping between Marcus and the woman, like he was protecting the diner from some threat. Don't go out there. Behind the windows, customers paused mid-bite. Some turned their heads. Some whispered. Some rolled their eyes like they knew this show already. Marcus took one slow breath, steadying himself, choosing who he wanted to be, rather than who the world tried making him. Sir, I can't just pretend like I don't see her. Robin's jaw clenched. Marcus, inside. The old woman took a tiny step forward, and that was all it took. Her cane slid on the wet concrete, her foot skidded, and she swayed dangerously. Ma'am? Marcus gasped, and in that moment, instinct beat orders. He ran, straight into the storm. Robbins yelled something, maybe his name, maybe a curse, but the rain swallowed every sound. Marcus reached the woman just as her knee buckled. He grabbed her elbow with one hand, the back of her coat with the other, holding her steady before the pavement could catch her. It's okay, I got you, he said, voice soft as the rain pounded harder. Easy now, lean on me. The woman blinked up at him, gratitude trembling in her eyes. Oh, thank you, dear. Don't worry about a thing. We're getting you inside. He shrugged off his jacket, thin as it was, and draped it around her shoulders. The cold tore straight through his shirt, but he didn't care. He held the woman close, guiding her step by step toward the diner door. Inside, customers watched through the windows, faces pressed to the glass. Some looked sympathetic, others annoyed. People loved kindness until it made their pancakes cold. Marcus opened the diner door gently, shielding the woman from the gust of wind with his ow. Come on in, ma'am. I'll get you someplace warm. But standing right inside the doorway, blocking entrance, like a bouncer at a club he didn't belong to, was Robbins, arms folded, face twisted, eyes cold as the rain behind Marcus. You're done. Marcus blinked rain out of his lashes. Sir? You're fired. The words were so quiet, so deliberate, they felt like they were carved in stone. The diner fell silent. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Coffee cups hovered midair. Conversations stopped like someone cut the power. Fired? Marcus repeated, voice trembling between disbelief and humiliation. For helping her? You disobeyed a direct instruction, Robin said calmly, as if he hadn't just changed a man's entire day in under 3 seconds. You're insubordinate, and I'm not putting up with it. Marcus's heart stuttered, then dropped like the rain behind him. The old woman looked between them, horrified. Sir, please, don't punish him. I slipped. He only want. Robbins raised a hand dismissively. Ma'am, this ain't your concern. She straightened slowly, dignity rising even through her shivering. It absolutely is. But Robbins turned away, ignoring her like she didn't matter. Marcus stood there, dripping, shirt plastered to his chest, hair cold and heavy, breath shaking between shock and heartbreak. He looked around the diner at customers he'd served for months, people he'd greeted with smiles, people he'd refilled coffee for 100 times. Not one voice rose for him. Not one. The humiliation settled in his bones like ice. Sir, please, Marcus whispered, not begging for the job, but for a shred of fairness. I didn't do anything wrong. Robbins didn't even look at him. Get your stuff and go. Marcus stood still for a moment, too stunned to swallow, too hurt to breathe. The old woman reached for his hand, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, Marcus said instantly, squeezing her fingers gently. This ain't on you. He helped her to a booth, despite Robin's muttering in the background. One step at a time, one quiet breath at a time, he guided her safely to the seat. His hands shook, but he kept them steady for her sake. You warm enough? He asked softly. She nodded weakly. Marcus took his apron off. The knot came loose with a single sad tug. He folded it slowly, carefully, because his dignity was the only thing he had left to control right now. He placed it on the counter, water dripping from his sleeves onto the floor in tiny, trembling puddles. Every eye in the diner watched him. He gave no one the satisfaction of seeing him break. Good luck, he said quietly, to no one and everyone. Then he turned toward the door. But as he walked away, the old woman's voice followed him, strong despite her frailty. You didn't deserve this. Marcus paused. He looked back at her, just for a second, and offered a small, sad half-smile. I'll be all right, ma'am. He wasn't sure, but he said it anyway. Then he stepped back into the storm, rain swallowing him whole as the diner door closed behind him with a dull, final thud. The storm didn't let up after Marcus walked out. It pounded the streets like it was trying to erase the whole town. Rain splashed off car roofs, turned gutters into mini rivers, and sent stray leaves skittering across the pavement like they were trying to run from something too. Inside the diner, though, everything had shifted. Nobody said it out loud, but every customer felt that strange heaviness lingering in the air. The kind that comes right after somebody witnesses something unfair, but pretends it ain't their business. The kind that clings to the walls like humidity. Mrs. Whitfield sat alone in the booth Marcus had brought her to, hands trembling as she brushed the water from her skirt. Her silver hair clung to her forehead in soft, wet curls. She dabbed gently at her face with the napkin Marcus had handed her, the same napkin he'd placed in her palm like it was something precious. She watched the door he'd just walked out of, watched it like she was waiting to see him reappear, even though deep down she knew he wouldn't. Not today. Not after what happened. The diner clattered back to life around her, forks scraping, chairs squeaking, conversations shifting awkwardly. But Mrs. Whitfield didn't touch the menu, didn't sip the water someone dropped off at her table, didn't even look at the coffee that was starting to cool in front of her. She was watching the world like a judge again, quiet, observant, thinking. And Mrs. Whitfield was no ordinary old woman, no matter how fragile she'd looked in the rain. She was a retired judge, respected more than half the people in town even realized. Decades on the bench, decades of seeing injustices dressed up as misunderstandings, decades of watching people with power misuse it, people with none suffer for it. And today, right in front of her, she watched a good man get punished for something the world should have been clapping for. Marcus didn't even know who she was, didn't know her name. He just saw someone who needed help and didn't think twice. That alone told her everything she needed to know about his character. She let out a soft breath, adjusting her glasses. Her fingers were still trembling, anger disguised as age. Robbins passed by her booth, avoiding her eyes like she was contagious. She cleared her throat sharply. "Excuse me, young man," she said in a firm but gentle tone. Robbins stiffened, turning with a strained smile. "Yes, ma'am, someone will be with you in a moment." "I don't need someone," she said calmly. "I need you." The manager's fake smile flickered. "All right, what seems to be the problem?" "The problem," she said, folding her hands neatly, "is that you fired a kind, hard-working young man for doing something any decent human would have done." Robbins swallowed, eyes darting toward nearby tables. A few folks were listening, pretending not to, but definitely listening. "Ma'am," he began, shifting uncomfortably. "There was protocol. He disobeyed." "Oh, please," she cut in, voice sharp as a gavel. "I might be old, but I'm not foolish. I saw everything. That young man saved me from falling. He made sure I wasn't hurt. And you," her eyes narrowed, "you punished him for compassion." Robbins opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Do you even know his name?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "That's what I thought," she murmured. "People like him go unseen until someone needs something. I've watched men like you for decades, men who cling to authority so tightly they forget what humanity looks like." Robbins flushed red. "Listen, lady. My name," she said, lifting her chin, "is Eleanor Whitfield." Recognition hit him like a truck. Judge Whitfield. The Judge Whitfield. His throat bobbed. Oh, I didn't realize." "No," she said firmly. "You didn't realize anything." She grabbed her cane from the seat beside her and slowly pushed herself up, though it took effort. "I'm going home now. But before I do, let me make one thing clear." The diner fell quiet again. People pretended to stare at their plates, but their ears leaned in. "That young man's name is Marcus, and if you think this ends here, you're sorely mistaken." Robbins swallowed hard. "Ma'am, let's not blow this out of proportion." "Proportion?" she echoed with a cold little laugh. "Oh, my dear boy, you haven't seen proportion yet." She buttoned her damp coat, straightened her shoulders, and took one last look around the diner. A long, slow, disappointed look. Then she stepped toward the door, cane tapping softly across the tile. Rain was still coming down in sheets, but Mrs. Whitfield didn't hesitate. She stepped into it like the storm itself was less intimidating than the injustice she'd just watched. She walked to her car, hands still shaking, not from cold, but from fury. Because Marcus didn't deserve what happened today. He didn't deserve the embarrassment, the humiliation, the silence from people who should have spoken up. And as she closed her car door, breathing hard, she made a decision, not one of passive sympathy, but action, real, meaningful, loud action. She drove home, trailing rainwater and resolve, her jaw tight the whole ride. The moment she stepped inside her warm living room, she dropped her soaked coat on a chair and went straight to her desk. She sat, opened her laptop, wiped her glasses, and began to type. First an email, then another, then a third. Then she picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years, one that still held weight in this town. Because good men shouldn't suffer in silence. Not on her watch. Not anymore. Marcus woke up the next morning with a headache that felt like it had been pounding all night long. Not the kind from liquor or missleep. The kind that comes from thinking too much, replaying too much, hurting too much. The kind that sits behind your eyes and whispers, "You ain't built for this world," even though you know damn well you are. His room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the old box fan in the corner. The curtains glowed faintly with the early morning light, but the sky outside was still a moody, wintry gray. The storm from yesterday had passed, but it didn't feel gone. It felt like it had just swapped places with the one inside him. He swung his feet onto the cold floor, rubbed his palms over his face, and sighed. Didn't want to look at his phone. Didn't want to face the weight waiting in it. But sooner or later, you gotta look at the fire to know how big it's burning. When he finally glanced at it, the lock screen was a mess of notifications, text messages, missed calls, alerts from social media apps he barely ever used. He frowned. What the hell? He tapped one of the news notifications. A headline popped up. Bold. Too bold. Like a punch straight to the stomach. Waiter fired for helping elderly woman in rain. Witness speaks out. For a second, Marcus thought he was hallucinating. He blinked again. But nope, there it was. Beneath it, a sub-headline. A good man was punished for doing the right thing. Judge Eleanor Whitfield. His heart dropped and jumped at the same time. Confusion wove itself through panic. He sat up straighter, the room suddenly too small to breathe in. What did she... how... He scrolled. There she was, her post, public, loud, and written with fire behind every word. Mrs. Whitfield had written a full account of what happened. The storm, the fall, Marcus helping her, the firing, the humiliation she watched with her own eyes, and she didn't leave out a single detail. People were already sharing it by the hundreds, then thousands. People were angry, outraged, disgusted. Comment after comment saying things like, "He deserves his job back." Unbelievable. Why is kindness so rare it gets punished now? Someone give that man a raise. Who's the manager? Fire him. Marcus dropped his phone onto the blanket, pressing his hands to his forehead. His breath shook. This ain't what I wanted. It was too much, too fast, too loud. He didn't want to be news. Didn't want pity, didn't want fame. He just wanted to help someone and get on with his shift. He heard movement from down the hall. A door creaked open softly. Marcus? His younger brother called, voice groggy. Isaiah stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes, curly hair sticking up like a halo of chaos. You okay? He asked, noticing the stunned look on Marcus's face. You been sitting still like you saw a ghost. Marcus swallowed, picked up his phone, handed it to him. Isaiah read the headline out loud, eyebrows slowly rising. Bro, you're on the news. Yeah, Marcus whispered. Isaiah scrolled, lips parting. Judge Whitfield? The Judge Whitfield? Yo, she vouched for you, publicly, like big time. Marcus forced a tiny smile. Guess she meant what she said yesterday. Isaiah sat beside him on the edge of the bed, eyes scanning comment after comment. People mad, man. Like, big mad. They coming for the diner. There's already a hashtag. What hashtag? Marcus groaned. Isaiah showed him. Hashtag stand with Marcus. Shut his eyes. Lord, I was just trying to help her up. A soft silence settled between them. After a moment, Isaiah asked, Did you do something wrong? Marcus looked at his little brother, this kid who believed in him more than anybody else in the world, who looked up to him like Marcus hung the moon. He couldn't let him think he messed up. He managed a small, tired smile. "No, baby. I just tried to help." Isaiah nodded slowly and leaned against him. Marcus wrapped an arm around his shoulder without thinking. The weight hit him all at once. The embarrassment, the fear, the bills looming, the spotlight burning, the shame he shouldn't feel but did anyway. It all poured out like a dam had cracked somewhere behind his ribs. Because people online might be cheering him on, but they weren't the ones who had to pay rent next week. They weren't the ones who lost a job. They weren't the ones who still had groceries to buy. They weren't the ones whose pride had been stripped in front of a whole room of strangers. His phone buzzed again. A voicemail from a number he didn't recognize. A missed call from a local TV station. A text from Maddie from the diner. "Marcus, everything's blowing up. Call me." Then one from Jenna. "You okay?" Then a message from a number saved as unknown. "Please contact us ASAP about your story." He tossed his phone aside, heart pounding. "I don't want all this," he whispered. Isaiah nudged him gently. "Maybe it's a good thing, though. People finally see what happened." "People see for a day," Marcus said quietly. "Internet don't stay mad long. They'll move on. But I'm still fired. I still got bills. And now everybody in this damn town knows my name." The truth of that stung. He wasn't used to being seen. Not like this. Not for reasons he didn't choose. He stood up slowly, pressing a hand against the window. Outside, the driveway glistened with leftover rain. The world felt quiet, too quiet, like it was the eye of a different storm. His stomach twisted. His breath trembled. His thoughts spiraled. Humiliation sank deep. Even though he hadn't done anything wrong, it clung to him like wet clothes he couldn't peel off. He didn't know how to face the day. Didn't know how to face the town. Didn't know what he was supposed to do. He didn't know what came next. All he knew was this. It didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like his life was cracking open in front of him, and he was terrified of what might spill out. Scene 6. Marcus didn't go outside that whole morning, didn't even step onto the porch. He paced the living room instead, running his thumb along the edge of his phone, staring at it like it was a bomb waiting to go off. Notifications kept flashing across the screen, faster than he could clear them. Articles, shares, comments, quotes, a snowball of attention rolling downhill and growing with every second. He didn't want any of it. He didn't want cameras in his face. He didn't want sympathy soaked in pity. He didn't want strangers online telling him he was inspirational, like heartbreak was a hobby he practiced. He just wanted yesterday undone. By noon, the phone vibrated again, a number he didn't know. He silenced it. It rang again, then again. Finally, Isaiah walked over, plucked the phone out of his hand, and said, "Bro, just answer one. Pick one person and see what they want. Hiding ain't helping." Marcus rubbed his temples. "I ain't built for all this attention." "Yeah," Isaiah said, dropping onto the couch beside him. But the attention came anyway. Marcus didn't respond, didn't move, didn't know how to. He felt like the world was watching him through a glass window he never agreed to stand behind. The phone lit up again, this time showing a local number he recognized from the news station downtown. Isaiah nudged him. "Just answer it." After a long, shaky breath, Marcus finally swiped to accept. "Hello?" A professional voice came through instantly. "Hello? Is this Marcus Brooks?" "Yeah, it is. This is Channel 9 News. We'd like to invite you in for an interview. We believe your story deserves to be heard in your own words. Mrs. Whitfield speaks very highly of you and—" "I'm not trying to be a show," Marcus murmured, closing his eyes. "I appreciate y'all thinking of me, but I'm not comfortable with all that." "We understand completely, but this could help clarify things publicly. And it might help your situation. He hesitated. That last part hurt because it was true. We can work around your comfort level, the caller continued gently. You don't have to speak long. Just tell your truth. Truth. He could do truth. But did he want to? He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, someone knocked at the door. A soft, polite knock. Not impatient, not urgent. Just present. Isaiah got up to check. When he opened the door, a familiar older woman stood on the porch, leaning on her cane, hat pulled low against the muggy breeze. Mrs. Whitfield. Isaiah blinked. Hi, ma'am, can we help you? She smiled warmly. Is Marcus home? Isaiah stepped aside. Come in. Marcus sat up quickly when he saw her. Ma'am, Mrs. Whitfield, you didn't have to come all the way here. Oh, hush, she said, waving off the concern. I'm old, not fragile. And I came because I needed to look you in the eye. She eased into a chair with Isaiah's help, smoothing her coat. Her presence brought a strange calm to the room, like a teacher settling a noisy class just by walking in. Marcus sat across from her, hands clasped, nerves buzzing. She looked at him gently, really looked, like she was studying the pain behind his face. I saw your name everywhere this morning, she said softly, and I imagine it's overwhelming. You could say that, Marcus muttered with a breathy, humorless laugh. Marcus, she began, her voice steady with old wisdom. You didn't embarrass yourself. They embarrassed themselves. The words landed in a place deep inside him, somewhere tightly coiled and sore. He swallowed. Still feels like the whole town knows my business. Well, that town should have known your goodness long before now, she said. If anything, they're late. He didn't respond, couldn't. His throat tightened. Mrs. Whitfield leaned forward. You were mistreated, and you deserve the chance to say your piece, not for spectacle, not for pity, but because your voice matters. Isaiah nodded quickly beside him, eyes bright with agreement. Marcus looked between them, one young, one old, both believing in him more than he believed in himself. He whispered, I don't want folks thinking I'm trying to be famous. I ain't trying to make noise. Mrs. Whitfield chuckled softly. Some noise needs to be made, darling. Not every truth stays quiet. He let that sit for a long moment, then another. Finally, he exhaled, shoulders dropping. All right, I'll do it. The interview. Her eyes softened. Good, I'll go with you. Marcus blinked. Ma'am, you don't gotta. I want to, she said firmly. You helped me yesterday without hesitation. Allow me to stand with you now. His chest tightened, the kind of tight that wasn't pain, just emotion swelling heavy and warm. Later that afternoon, they arrived at the news station. Cameras were set up, lights bright, people bustling quietly behind desks. Marcus felt like his skin didn't fit right, like he was wearing clothes 2 sizes too small. A makeup artist offered to powder his face. He politely refused. He wanted to look real, not polished. When he finally sat in the interview chair, his hands trembled in his lap. Mrs. Whitfield rested a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Just breathe, she whispered. The interviewer gave him a gentle smile. Whenever you're ready, Marcus. A camera light blinked on. The red recording dot felt like a warning sign. Marcus swallowed hard. Then he spoke. At first, his voice quivered, soft and unsure. But as the words came, honest, quiet, steady, he found a rhythm. I wasn't trying to be a hero, he said. I saw a woman who needed help, and I lost my job for it. He talked about the rain, the fall, the moment he stepped outside, the firing, the silence of the room, the weight of walking away. He didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse, didn't rage. He just told the truth. Raw, simple, undeniable. Millions would later say it was the honesty that got them, the vulnerability, the decency in every word. But Marcus didn't know that yet. He finished quietly. I ain't asking for nothing. I just want folks to know I was trying to do right. The interviewer nodded, misty-eyed. Mrs. Whitfield squeezed his shoulder, and somewhere across the city, across the state, across the internet, people listened. They didn't scroll past. They didn't shrug. They didn't turn away. They listened. For the first time in his life, Marcus's voice didn't disappear into the noise. The interview aired that evening. By sunrise the next morning, the whole town felt different. It wasn't loud, not yet, but there was this strange humming undercurrent, like the community was collectively pulling in a breath and holding it. People talked in grocery store aisles. They whispered in church parking lots. They argued in Facebook groups that had no business being as active as they suddenly were. Even the gas station clerks were chatting about it over the beep of the register. Everybody had an opinion, and for once, most of those opinions weren't pointed at Marcus. They were pointed at the diner. Whitby's Corner, the old breakfast spot everybody claimed to love, suddenly felt like the center of a storm it didn't know how to weather. Some folks demanded Marcus be rehired. Some said Robbins should have been fired months ago. Others tried to spin the story, saying Marcus must have had a history of issues. Those people were quickly shut down by Judge Whitfield herself in a follow-up post that read simply, "If he had a history of issues, I would have known. I do my homework." Nobody argued with her after that. By noon, the diner's owner, Mr. Langford, a balding man with a nervous smile and the personality of a deflated balloon, released a statement on social media. It was the kind of apology that sounded like someone Googled how to apologize without admitting fault. It said things like, "We're sorry if anyone was offended. This incident does not reflect our values. We're committed to doing better." Folks roasted him in the comments within minutes. Across town, Marcus sat on his couch, staring at his phone like he was watching someone else's life unfold. Comments poured in. Shares climbed. His interview clip hit over 1 million views in 24 hours. But none of that felt real. What felt real was the knot in his stomach. What felt real was the fear of walking back into a place that humiliated him. What felt real was not knowing what doing better even looked like. A sudden knock at the door snapped him out of his thoughts. Isaiah peeked through the blinds. "It's that Langford guy, the owner." Marcus stiffened. "For what?" Isaiah shrugged. "Only one way to find out." Marcus hesitated, then opened the door. Langford stood there holding his hat in both hands like a schoolboy waiting outside the principal's office. Behind him, straight-backed, chin up, eyes sharp, stood Mrs. Whitfield. "Good afternoon, Marcus," Langford said with a strained smile. "May we come in?" Marcus looked at the judge. She gave a tiny nod. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "Come on." Langford and Mrs. Whitfield sat on the couch. The owner cleared his throat, sweat already glistening on his forehead. "First off, son, I want to apologize, truly, from the bottom of my heart." Marcus said nothing. "I spoke with Robbins this morning and, well, he's been let go." Marcus blinked. "You fired him?" Langford nodded quickly. "Effective immediately." Mrs. Whitfield folded her hands neatly. "We felt that was an appropriate first step." Langford added, "And I'd like to offer you your job back, with a raise, and full back pay for the days you missed." Marcus stared at him, caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. "A raise?" Marcus asked slowly. "Yes, absolutely," Langford said. nodding too rapidly. And we'll be implementing anti-discrimination training for all staff. Non-negotiable. Good, Mrs. Whitfield said firmly. Very good. Marcus looked at her. You really went to bat for me? I didn't go to bat, she corrected softly. I brought a spotlight. Your truth did the rest. He swallowed hard. His eyes burned a little, and he looked away so they wouldn't see. Isaiah watched from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, but smiling like his big brother was a superhero. Langford leaned forward. Marcus, I know this doesn't erase what happened, but I'm hoping, maybe, it can be a new start. A long silence filled the room. Heavy, honest, necessary. Then Marcus exhaled slowly. All right, he said quietly. I'll come back. Langford let out a visible sigh of relief. Thank you, son, truly. But Mrs. Whitfield wasn't done. I'll be attending his first shift, she said coolly, just to make sure the environment has adjusted. Langford's smile flickered. Of course, Judge, of course. When they finally left, Isaiah threw an arm around Marcus's shoulders. Dude, look at you. Justice served with extra syrup. Marcus snorted. Shut up. Later that week, when Marcus walked into the diner again, the bell above the door jingled like always. But everything else felt different. The customers looked up, paused, then slowly, softly, they started clapping. Not loud applause, not a standing ovation, just a gentle, warm, collective acknowledgement. Even the ones who didn't speak up before looked down at their plates, cheeks burning with guilt. Maddie rushed over and hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. Finally, she whispered, "You're back where you belong." Marcus smiled, small and real. Feels different this time. Mrs. Whitfield settled herself into a booth and tapped the table. I'll take a coffee, dear, black, and don't be shy with the refills. He laughed, the sound surprising even himself. Yes, ma'am. As he moved through the diner, refilling cups like he always had, something new filled the air, something lighter than before. Respect, real respect. For the first time, people weren't looking past him. They were looking at him. When he reached Mrs. Whitfield's booth, she gave him a soft, knowing smile. See, she said, good hearts get their day too. And for the first time since the storm began, Marcus believed her. The morning light drifted into the diner like it had an apology to make, spilling warm gold across the cracked vinyl booths and old linoleum floor. The sky outside had finally calmed, blue and soft, like the world was trying to make up for the chaos it had thrown at Marcus just days before. He moved through the restaurant with the same quiet rhythm he always had. But today, something felt different. The steps came easier. The air felt lighter, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't carrying his whole world alone. At table 5, Mr. Tanner lifted his mug with a cheerful nod. Morning, Marcus. Morning, sir. You want your usual? Wouldn't have it any other way. Marcus smiled, refilling his coffee before heading toward the counter. As he walked, the soft murmur of voices followed him. Kind voices this time. Real ones. Someone whispered, "That's him." Another murmured, "He's the one who helped that woman." A few simply said his name, gentle admiration tucked behind their words. Not gossip, not judgment, not those whispered complaints he'd gotten so used to ignoring. Just respect. And even though he'd never admitted aloud, it meant something. A lot, actually. The bell above the door jingled again, and sunlight poured in as a family walked inside. Marcus greeted them with that warm, familiar smile that came naturally to him. Like greeting the world with kindness was the only way he knew how to live. And somewhere behind him, sitting proudly in her booth with her cane resting beside her, Mrs. Whitfield watched him work like she was witnessing a story she already knew the ending to. He walked over to her with a fresh pot of coffee. "Need a warm-up?" "Always," she said, sliding her mug toward him. He filled it gently, steam rising between them. She studied his face. "You look lighter today." Marcus shrugged. "Feels a little lighter." She smiled. "Storms do that, you know. Clear the air." He glanced out the window at the sunlight stretching across the pavement. "Guess this one had to get real messy first." "That's the nature of storms," she said softly. "They shake what needs shaking." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The diner hummed around them, silverware clinking, soft laughter from a couple near the back, the sizzle of bacon on the grill. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magical, but it was peaceful. Something Marcus hadn't felt in a long time. He leaned his hip against the booth, wiping down the coffee pot handle absently. His thoughts drifted, not backward toward the hurt, but forward, toward the man he wanted to be. "Can I tell you something?" he asked quietly. Mrs. Whitfield folded her hands. "Of course." "I didn't think anybody saw me," he admitted. "Not really. I just tried to do right, 'cause that's who my mama raised me to be. But sometimes it felt like I was invisible. Like it didn't matter if I was kind or worked hard or kept my head down. Felt like folks only noticed when they wanted to judge me." She nodded slowly. "I know that feeling well." Marcus stared at her, surprised. "You?" "Oh yes," she said, eyes glinting with memory. "When I first became a judge, people doubted me because I was a woman, because I didn't come from a wealthy family, because I didn't fit their mold. I had to fight to be seen, even when I was right there in front of them." "How'd you deal with it?" She smiled gently. "By being exactly who I knew I was." Marcus held her gaze for a long second. Something warm settled in his chest, a sense of being understood, perhaps for the first time by someone outside his family. As he stepped back to refill another table's drinks, a quiet voice seemed to echo inside his mind, his own voice, softer than the first time he'd said it. "Sometimes being kind costs you." He reached for a coffee cup, watching the steam curl into the air. "Sometimes it takes everything." He wiped down a counter, listening to the quiet hum of the diner. But every now and then, someone sees you. He glanced across the room at Mrs. Whitfield, who raised her mug in a small salute. Someone stands up, and that changes the whole story. Later, as the morning rush faded and the sun climbed higher in the sky, Marcus paused beside the front window. The glass was warm beneath his palm, the world outside shimmering with fresh, clean light. The storm was gone, but what it left behind felt worth something. He took a slow breath, watching people move along the sidewalk, ordinary folks in an ordinary town, living ordinary lives. And yet, he felt connected to them in a way he hadn't before. Not because they all knew his name now, not because the world had seen his face, but because he'd learned something that made all the difference. Doing the right thing was never about who was watching. It was about who you were when nobody clapped. He whispered the words to himself, like a promise meant only for his own ears. Do good anyway. He pressed his palm to the warm window one last time and smiled softly. Even if nobody's clapping yet. And with that, he turned back toward the diner, the place where storms had begun, and the place where something new and steady was finally taking root. A place where, for the first time, Marcus wasn't invisible. He was seen, and he was ready for whatever came next.